I am your host, Seriously Focused Johnnie. This is Difficult People Chronicles. Today is a Q&A. It's called The Struggle is Real. This was a question that was asked. A person asked me, what do I think takes place when God gives people a test? Because in one of my prior episodes, I talked about basically that everything is not from the devil. Sometimes in life, we are faced with situations where it's a test from God, and we have to decide. Instead of turning to Him, we turn to the people in the public for answers, or we go with our ego, what our ego wants. So I'm gonna tell you a story. There was a man who met this woman. He thought that when he met her, he was set. He was ready to start his family. In his eyes, he wanted a woman who was the following: cute, young. She would depend on him from his situation, just his. It was control. He was all about how they look in the public's eyes. He had another option as well. Like there was two people in his path, option A and option B. Option B wasn't good enough for him. Option A was a freak in the bed. She was basically the type of person to sweat him, meaning that she didn't have her own identity. She was all about him, him, his interests, his career, whatever he liked, she liked, whatever he did, she did. If he liked grapes and she liked chocolate, she would say she liked grapes, even though she couldn't stand it. He was content with her not knowing a lot in life, because he felt that he can basically mold her. So if she didn't know what it took to be a wife, he was okay with his rendition of what it takes to be a wife. And in the end, he got exactly what he asked for. A Jezebel. Yeah, a Jezebel. So she kept herself, her true identity hidden, because she basically wanted his money. She wanted fame, everything that she wanted, she felt that he could provide. In actuality, she didn't really like him. So when it became a struggle with her and him, where he started not to like who she was, she tried to kill his soul. She turned the tables. She wanted him to be okay with certain things. Like, she knew she was cute, and even though she was with him for the money, she wasn't willing to let him go. So she would do whatever it takes to be with him, but she still wanted what she wanted. So she wanted someone else. So she wanted him to be okay with being with someone else, or even if it meant her wanting multiple men. And like I said before, she was using him for his money. So if he decided to pull back on money, she would manipulate him. Before she showed him her true colors, they had a child, and she used this child to get what she wanted. Now, let's keep in mind that all the things that she was to him, she didn't want to be. She didn't want to be a mother. She didn't want to be a wife, because she wanted all these other men and not him. The only thing she wanted was his money. When the struggle started, she tried to control him through evil deeds, spells, witchcraft. He would come home and he would give her his money. So basically, there was an age difference. He became her sugar daddy. And like one of my friends said, he said, reverse pimping. So basically, the way she thought about certain things was, if you don't give me the money, I will make your life miserable and difficult, because she saw her playing field where she can get what she want and do what she want. They weren't married. If anybody showed interest in him, who she felt was competition, she tried to kill their soul too. So she would do things to mask the other party. And that's what she did with option B, because she knew that option B liked him. Option A and B was at the same place at the same time, but he went after option A instead of option B. Option B had no idea about option A, but option A was watching her in the cut. So she did things to try to mask option B, which is make her appear ugly, fat, being evil. She tried to interfere with, just her whole lifestyle. Meaning, how could I say, option A was not only into multiple men, one man, all this, and not the guy, but she also liked women. So she found option B attractive. But at the same token, she didn't want option B to be with the guy she was with. So she masked her, like I said before. She tried to make option B stuck and stagnant with pain, illness, and she tried to kill her spirit. Why? Because if she kills her spirit, she could turn her away from God. She did things to steal option B's career and all this other stuff. And then what made it crazy is that her family was on board. So this whole mindset of how she operated was in within her family tree. Now, the reason why her family was on board with it is because he not only took care of her, but he took care of the family. So they didn't want him with anyone else. He was their meal ticket. She manipulated him into doing things to himself, bewitched him, right? He suffered the most for a while. And unbeknownst to Jezebel, God came for the both of them. God opened his eyes and made him bow down to him. And the reason being is that, you see, he was already walking on a straight path, and then there was a option for God was testing him to say, how loyal are you to me? And he chose option A instead of option B. Option A was just good on the surface. She suffered. Months later, she died in a tragic accident. So before the tragic accident, she went through pain and sickness. She ended up having pain throughout her body from whatever illness she had. Then they diagnosed it, said it was a sickness, and then after that she died of some kind of accident. All the other people in her family who was on board with her plan, they were not exempt. See, before homeboy met her, he was walking on a straight path. Like I said, he had two options. He chose the wrong one. He chose what his ego wanted. In his head, he was just like, basically, God, I know you want me to be with option B or be with whoever or whatever. I don't really like her. This is what I want. And this one, she seems to be into God and all this other stuff, and she looks good, and she's more my type. So his ego was heightened. He was just like, and if it don't work out, I can always leave. When it came to option B, he was like, oh, I would never marry her. And this is what he was saying to, amongst his friends. I would never marry her. I know the type of woman I want, and this and this and that, and what God has for me and all this other stuff. So God was like, oh yeah? And before this whole situation, he was two-faced. Even when God told him, humble yourself, he talked about the other option like a dog, like she was just average, when in reality, at the time, she looked average. But what it was that she was God's best kept secret. He joined in on public opinion, just saying all sorts of stuff. During that time, God put him on a path to build, but he was double-minded. He would build people up, and the same people he built up, if he felt that they were getting too ahead of him, he would tear them down. So he had insecurity issues. And one day God was like, enough is enough. Like, I gave you too many chances. You're getting on my nerve. In the midst of things, God told the second option, option B, to leave. See, the second option B, never knew that he was saying all these things about her. She found out through a friend, a mutual friend, and that's when she decided to go on about her business. And God was like, let me see him handle this on his own, because the struggle is real. Like I said, he had insecurity issues, and in his eyes, he thought he was fine as wine. He thought he was a man of value, and he was a man of value to the world. But in God's eyes, his value was being sliced in half. And he failed at a number of things. He suffered depression, sorrow, anxiety, misery, the list goes on. He had a near-death experience, almost taking his own life. He started to fight his own demons. So it boiled down to one day him ready to give in and submit to God and be right with God. And God started to work on him. Why? Because the struggle was real. God was like, I am humbling you and you're going to learn. God let him know that it was not about him and his status or what he thinks. The struggle meant he only had 2 ways to go, because God was using him for his assignment. Either right with peace or left with death, because that's exactly where Jezebel was going. And she died. So you know how she died in the Bible, right? Well, in 2 Kings chapter 9 verse 30 to 37, she basically got trampled with horses where her body was lifeless. And when they left her outside, and basically when they came back outside to prepare her burial, there was nothing left of her because the dogs basically got a hold of her and devoured her. Jezebel's death is basically an example of, not basically, it is an example of what happens to a person when you go against God and you feel like you can't be touched and you continue to do the nonsense that you do. Believing in false gods, witchcraft, all of that. You know, for him, I say that everyone deserves to be forgiven. Some people try to walk the right path, and others, they just keep playing until their time run out. Now, remember, there was 2 options, like I said, option A, option B. Now, the person who was option B was praying for a lot of things in her life. Like homeboy, she prayed for a lot of things in her future, but not him. You know, at one point she liked him, and then she stopped praying and just started praying for her future spouse, pray for her job, her family, children, all that stuff. This is why it's so imperative, why you have to pray for your future and never judge. Some people, they just, at that time, season, or whatever, they just don't appear to be right. Their cocky attitudes, they could develop that in their family, from their mother, father. They become a product of their environment or whatever the situation is. And some people are around people who they feel that they need to please. So they become part of that clique because it seems normal. So back to the story. When God showed him, he realized he had it wrong all along. He realized that the people around him never cared about him. Why? Because they were on board and they co-signed to this buffoonery. What was going on wasn't normal. And in actuality, he tried real hard to love Jezebel, but he couldn't. Like, he couldn't stand her. But his family liked her, who they thought she was. And then Jezebel's family liked him because he had money. So, now that we went through that whole story, one of the things I could say is, and we're going to go into this some other time, called public opinion, but one of the things I could say, it's important that you ask God about your options. You ask God you work on your character, because when that ego takes over and that ego says, I should have this and I should have that, and that's what I want, out of control and all this other stuff, God is sitting there saying, he might be saying, that's not for you. You know, that's number one. So you got to pray about, developing your character. You got to pray about your future. It's important that you pray about your future spouse, if you don't have one, your future kids, all this other stuff. Because what happens is, you don't know where your future spouse is at. There could be a delay in whatever, because your future spouse can be dealing with some Jezebel or some nonsense that's going on with the family or whatever situation is, and that person needs a prayer to remove the blockages and remove the delay. What else? Because a lot of times people say, yo, pray about your future husband. And you like, if that's in the future, why am I praying? I don't even know who he is. I don't even know where he is. But God knows where he's at. And he probably needs that prayer. So you pray about the future husband. So even though I was finished with the story, let me just add this little last part. I'm going to add this to the story. That once God changed him, he became her husband. Why? Because he ended up being, let's say, right in God's eyes. And God gave him a second chance. And I'm sure you hear about all these stories where God gives people a second chances. And they tell you their testimony. Like they could be a pimp or something and was dating somebody and then things just went left or whatever the situation is, and then God gave them a second chance. That doesn't mean you should get back with your ex-boyfriend. Don't feed into my story like that. Don't have delusional storytelling, okay? God gives people second chances. Now, because she was praying for her future spouse, they never dated. They met, and he was like, he didn't like her for whatever reason. But God had to humble him and push her away and make him go through some things with Jezebel. So that was done because he was messing up his own self. He did that to himself. And God said, I'm going to show you. Since you chose that, I'm going to show you what life is like with that. So that's the test. Sometimes you have two options and you got to choose. And a lot of times we don't know what to choose. We choose certain paths because our mind ain't right. And sometimes we choose based off of what everybody else think. Yeah, it's not like Amazon where you go in there and you click something to order and you see all these stars like it's a 5-star. You know, everybody's saying it's a perfect item. And then you have like 2 people that says that the item is trash. It's not like that. This is different. This is your life. So, and I'm human. So I've been there sometimes where I had 2 options and I had to choose, you know. When I was buying my car, there was one car that I really wanted. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. I test drove the car and I was like, oh, this is it. I could see me in it. Even though it was a beautiful, fancy car. God said something. God was like, recall this, that, something's going to be wrong with the car, this and that, and all this other stuff. And I had a dream where something fell off the car. It was a nightmare. And I was just like, yo, I'm just trying to buy a car. Like, this is not that serious. I'm having nightmares. And I was ready to buy that car. And then God said the other car. And I said, I don't really like that car. I didn't like nothing about it. But then I went and I test drive the car. And I said, it's not bad after all. And I bought that car. Don't you know, sometime after, there was people complaining about the first car that I wanted so bad. And yeah, it wasn't a good look. And then somebody who bought the car was complaining about everything. And his car wasn't even a year old. And he said he bought his car based off of something that someone said at his church. So, yeah. So that's it for today. I know that's probably a long one, but thank you for tuning in. And when it comes to the October freebie, because I'm still doing it, I will be choosing the people this week. So if you are interested, why am I getting tongue twisted? If you are interested in getting your free session, hit me up. All the information is below. And for one-on-one sessions or suggested topics, the information is below. Have a blessed week. Love me more and I love you more. Later.